What's up? This is Eddie Aparicio and Antoine Corral, and this is Buzzer Beaters. I almost said points in the word because that used to be the one I used to be on before. Anyway, Buzzer Beaters is a Grumblings media podcast that is focused on basketball. We dibble and dabble in the NCAA. We also dibble and dabble in WNBA, but primarily NBA is pretty much our bread and butter. You can find Buzzer Beaters on grumblingsmedia.com. You can also find us on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, X, any outlet you get your podcasts. We actually would normally be live, but we're not live today, unfortunately. It's because of the debates that happened on Tuesday. And because of the debates happened on Tuesday, we have the football show that actually they're taking our spot today for live. We had thought about going live tomorrow, but we want to keep it on Wednesday, right? So for those of you kind of looking for us for today, that's the reason, right? So we're going to go live again next week. But this week, we're going to go ahead and continue our preview of the upcoming NBA season. Last week, we went ahead and covered 4 teams from the West, 4 teams from the East. The teams that we covered last week were the Kings, Warriors, Blazers, Wolves, and then the Cavs, Pistons, Bucks, and Pacers. This week, we're going to go ahead and divvy it up. So the way we've been doing it is Twan and I go ahead and do 2 teams each from the East, 2 teams each from the West. So we're going to cover all 30 teams before the actual day of the first NBA game, which for 2024, which is going to be October 22nd, Tuesday. We actually have preseason games happening this Friday. The first preseason game is between the Nuggets and the Celtics. So we're going to go ahead and cover all of these teams before the 22nd. And then also we had intended to also have Angel Johnson talk about WNBA, but she's actually on vacation, man. She's still on vacation. What a great vacation she's on, man.
Yeah, I want that. I want that.
I know. She's an exec at Facebook, or Google, I should say. And, so she gets to do whatever she wants, man. But anyway, she's going to be joining us next week. She definitely said that she's going to join us so we can talk WNBA playoffs, because the WNBA playoffs is hot, right? We talked about the WNBA is hot right now. The general public has jumped on board, and they're definitely gravitating to this.
Although all those cool down a little bit now that Caitlin Clark is out of the playoffs.
Yeah, you're right.
Cool down a little bit, so yeah.
That'd be interesting to find out how much the viewership has changed. That would be interesting to see. We'll go ahead and get into that next week when Angel is on. But we want to go ahead and before we get into the previews, we wanted to go ahead and point out that we unfortunately lost a member of the NBA community 2 days ago in Dikembe Mutombo. Rest in peace, Dikembe Mutombo. He died way too young, man, at 58 years old. He actually got drafted in 1991. He actually was drafted by the Denver Nuggets. He actually was the number 4 overall pick out of Georgetown University. What's interesting, man? He had aspirations to be a doctor. Okay, can you imagine having a 7'2" doctor come to you, man?
No, I can't. With his big old hand.
Yeah, and then you hear his voice. Oh, his voice. Oh, what's wrong with you today?
That's like your Yoda Cookie Monster combination.
Can you imagine that coming to you, man? Anyway, his size was just way too big to overlook. So John Thompson just recruited him to go ahead and play basketball. And turns out it was a great choice because this guy played 18 NBA seasons. All right. He spanned 6 franchises. The teams that he covered for, he had a few of them up there, which is cool. You have the Nuggets, the Sixers, the Hawks, the Knicks, the Rockets, the Nets. I mean, he had 6 franchises that he played for. In his career, he had 13 playoff appearances. He has also an 8-time All-Star player, also a 6-time All-Defensive player. He actually led the league in blocks for 5 consecutive seasons, man. And also he had the most blocks per game, ratio for 3 consecutive seasons, which is a record, right? No other player has done that. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2015, and I would say that as a player, when I was watching him, I really liked him, man. I mean, he's a defensive guy, no offensive game to speak of, right? He was there for defense, man. And what he was known for was that wag, right? No. Every time he blocked a shot, you get the no. And, I remember, Twan, there were times when, he would block Jordan, right? but then Jordan sometimes would go ahead and block him. And then he would go, and then Jordan would be like, doing this right back to him. So it was great, man, seeing that kind of dynamic, man. What are some of the things you remember about Dikembe, man?
Well, so some of the things I remember, kind of going along what you're saying, it was a badge of honor that not much people got, but there was a badge of honor to be able to dunk on Dikembe. Absolutely. If you were able to get a dunk on Dikembe, that was a thing. And, in a lot of ways, he was a much both tougher and lovable, but he reminds me a little bit of Rudy Gobert in the terms of his capabilities. The league was much more low post oriented then, so he was in a much stronger position. But I just remember he was a good guy. I remember watching him at Georgetown down in the low post with Alonzo Mourning. I think we've commented in previous shows how much college basketball has changed from when we were growing up. And, you really got to know the teams and you really got to know the squads. And I remember that Hoya team. I remember, that kind of came in right after the Ewing era. Along comes Alonzo Mourning, along comes Dikembe Mutombo. Graham, if you remember him as well, just these big guys that were coming out of Georgetown.
They had Othello Harrington, Patrick Ewing. I mean, they were all big men, right?
They're all big guys. And, what I remember even from early on is how passionate he was about his country. You don't usually hear about where they're from. And you knew he was from the Congo. He made it known and how he was going back and helping his community. But, I enjoyed him. We make fun of his no, and people, but it was his tagline. And like I said, he was sort of mean, but lovable at the same time. He was a presence, but when he was kind of off the court, he was kind of just seemed like a huggable, kind of enjoyable guy. And so I really enjoyed it, and as I was going through just some of the reading material that I was going around Dikembe, I came across this post, which, kind of touched me, which is from his son, which his son basically articulates, how he knew his dad was a great NBA player and all that, but that's not what he remembers him for. He remembers him for being a great person, a great dad, a big humanitarian, just a good human being, and I think that speaks a lot about him, that his family remembers him for who he was, not what he did, which is really important. And, when my day comes, I hope my kids remember me the same way,
Yeah, you don't want our kids to remember us for this podcast, right?
or that I work here, or that I work there, or whatever,
Right. The things that we did to contribute, back to society, or the things that we did to go ahead and help to support our family and friends, right? That's what really where our legacies, really hold up, is when we do that kind of stuff. And this guy did it in spades, right? I mean, this guy, he founded a Dikembe Mutombo Foundation to improve the health, education, and overall lives of the people in the Congo. So this guy was big in giving back to his original community of the Congo.
Yeah, he's built hospitals, Eddie. I mean, he built hospitals.
I know, and he spoke like 9 languages, man. Yeah, this dude was hella smart. I mean, this guy was going to be a doctor. If you're going to be a doctor, man, you have to have that great memory because of all the crap you have to remember. And this guy obviously had a great memory to be able to retain all the different words and phrases and sentences of 9 languages, man. But he definitely was a true humanitarian for sure. And I got to tell you, when I watched him play, you really didn't get to see him interviewed too much. Sometimes you did, but I remember the first time I heard him interviewed, man, I was, what? This guy's what? I thought he was playing with this voice, man. His voice, rock shots and this, and, I'm like, whoa, dude, is he playing? Is that really his voice? And then it turns out that's really his voice, right? And he had these commercials, man. He had these, they were hilarious. But the
one where the guy's throwing away the paper,
he's like, throw the paper, he's like, no. And then he starts like, dude, and then he had the Castrol synthetic oil commercial with Jeff Gordon when they were playing those little guys on the shelves, and then
that's right.
He was like, what?
That's right.
He's hilarious.
Yeah,
and my daughter used to love watching that because she tripped off his voice. And I'm like, hey, baby, you're not the only one. When we first heard it, we're like, no way, this guy's voice like this. But it's true, man. That's the real voice. So
that's awesome.
So it was a great. He was a great player. More importantly, a great person, and he definitely will be missed. The NBA community will miss him. So rest in peace.
And a great representative for his part of the world. I think he inspired a lot of African players, a lot of Congan players to aspire to play in the NBA. Because Africa, like Olajuwon and those guys, they're all like they grew up watching soccer and playing soccer, and he kind of provided another avenue in terms of that. And I agree, and especially as far as I know, he used to go back home like all the time. He was back there all the time, and so
One other thing I forgot to point out, man. His team, the Denver Nuggets of 1994, was the first 8 seed to go ahead and take out a number 1 seed in a 5-game series. They were the first team to do it in a 5-game series. But we all know who did it the first time for a 7-game series, right? It's our Warriors. They took out the Dallas Mavericks. But anyway, he was the first one, and I remember just seeing him on the floor, just in disbelief when they won. He was on the floor with just this big old smile. Man, it was a great memory seeing that. That's something I remember about him is just the elation that he had when they won. They took out the Seattle Supersonics, in that 5-game series in 1994. So anyway, Dikembe and his family, rest in peace, and our condolences to the family of Dikembe Mutombo. He is definitely somebody that we're not going to forget.
My dad, when somebody died young, whenever somebody died, my dad always used to say, "Don't pray for the dead, pray for the living, because they're the ones that are suffering."
Yeah, it's true, man. It's true. It's true. It's true. Right on,
something that always stuck with me.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, now we got the awkward segue going into the team previews now, right? But we wanted to go ahead and just give Dikembe his props for his career as well as his humanitarian ways. So, all right. So you have the Los Angeles Clippers.
The Los Angeles Clippers.
So again, we're going to cover the Clippers, the Lakers, the Spurs, the Rockets from the West, and then the Bulls, the Knicks, the Hawks, and the Hornets from the East. So we'll go ahead and we'll go 2 first on your end. I'll go 2 on my end, and back and forth that way until we finish it out.
Sounds good. All right. So the LA Clippers, the enigma that is the LA Clippers. Last year, they ended up in the 4th seed. They had a pretty good season, even though, Kawhi was here and there, like he always is most seasons nowadays.
Yeah.
They ended with a record of 51-31. They did lose to Dallas, the eventual representative of the Western Conference in the NBA Finals. They lost in the first round 4-2. And so let's see. In terms of roster changes, they traded for Chris Dunn. They signed Kevin Porter as a free agent, signed Derek Jones as a free agent, signed Nicholas Batum as a free agent, drafted Cam Christie, a guy that we have talked about that I think we need to keep an eye. I
remember you're saying about this guy.
Yeah,
he had a very Klay Thompson kind of like jump shot.
Yes. He's got a very clean jumper. I need to see what he's going to develop into, but I like his shot a lot. It's very smooth. So we'll see what that is. They also signed Mo Bamba, who had a song after him, and I haven't really heard from him since, but he's been floating around the league.
Yeah, for sure.
And they also signed Trenton Flowers to a 2-way contract. Let's see.
I definitely like the Batum pick. That guy is long. He's a good defender. He's been with the Clippers before. The other guy that they brought, another long guy, the other name that you brought up, what was the other guy named?
Kevin Porter, the point guard, and Chris Dunn. Chris Dunn, maybe?
Yeah, no, it was the other guy. It's kind of like Nicholas Batum, kind of like the same length.
Derek Jones Jr.?
Derek Jones. There we go. Derek Jones. Yeah, man. I mean, those guys are 2 really good, solid wing defenders. And it's not like, the Clippers lack in that, although they did lose Paul George. So this is their way of kind of, backfilling Paul George as best as they can. But this team goes as Kawhi Leonard goes. And if Kawhi Leonard's on the court, they're going to be a problem. And you can see based on their net rating, that 3.24, they're 7th in the league. The offensive rating is really good too. I think that's going to suffer a little bit, with Paul George no longer being on the team. But it surprises me that their defensive rating was as low as it was at 19th. That's probably because Kawhi Leonard missed a lot of time, realistically, right?
Yeah, so, and in all honesty, Kawhi Leonard's missed a lot of time every year for the last handful of years. And so, I thought, they also, not that it would matter as much. They also lost Russell Westbrook. He's gone, whatever that means as a backup point guard for James Harden. So, but yeah, you're right. They very good offensive rating, very below average defensive rating. They rank 7th in terms of the net difference. They're a good team, but I think, Eddie, they're going to fall off a cliff this season.
Yeah, Paul George is a difference maker, man. And
not only was Paul George a difference maker, Paul George seemed to play better when Kawhi was out. And so he picked up a lot of the slack when Kawhi wasn't playing. And so I don't know. I mean, Nicholas Batum is a nice pickup, but he's an older guy.
Yeah,
he
but
can't.
Derek Jones is a good player, man. Derek Jones is a good player.
Yeah, he can't put in no 30 minutes, though. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. All right, let's see. In terms of projected starting five, I've got, Harden at the point guard, Terrence Mann at the 2, Derek Jones Jr., we just talked about at the starting forward position, Kawhi Leonard at the power forward, and then Zubac at the center, backing them up, backup point guard Chris Dunn, backup shooting small forward Norman Powell, backup shooting guard Norman Powell, backup small forward Amir Coffey, backup power forward PJ Tucker, who I believe they picked up. Did they pick him up this year? Or was he there last year?
No, he wasn't there last year because I think he was on the Sixers.
I didn't get him on my transaction. Oh yeah, they did pick. Yeah, and then Mo Bamba would be backing up Zubac. So that's a pretty good starting five. Presuming that Kawhi Leonard plays.
To me, that's what screams on that roster is defense. They definitely wanted to improve their defense for sure because their offense. I mean, the guys that are really offensive oriented on that team. Kawhi Leonard is, he's not offensive oriented. He's just a good offensive player, but he's a great defensive player. You got Norman Powell, right? He's like a 6-man kind of, off the bench kind of guy who just, is a microwave. From after that, it's just a bunch of really good, solid players that actually defend pretty damn good, man. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But you might be right. They might fall off just because I think their offensive rating is going to take a dip big time and their defensive rating is going to increase. So we shall see what that means.
So my projected standings here are with the assumption that Kawhi will miss equal amount of time this year as he has on average previous seasons. Right. But I think they're gonna slip out of the playoffs. I think they're gonna be around 43 and 39. I think they're gonna be right seed. I don't even think they're gonna make the play-in game. I really do think they're going to drop. We'll see how that plays out. But I think it all hinges on Kawhi. If Kawhi if he plays, let's call it between 65 and 70 games, I think that could go up to, maybe as high as an 8th seed. But if he continues like he has been, I think they're going to be on the low end.
All right, man. So that on the Clippers? Yep.
Moving on to our nemesis, the Los Angeles Lakers.
Los Angeles Lakers, absolutely.
Yes. So last year they finished in the 7th seed with a record of 47 and 35. They did lose to Denver in the first round on a gentleman's sweep, 4-1. In terms of roster changes, they signed as a free agent Christian Coloco. They also signed Colin Castleton on a 2-way contract.
He was on the team last year. Yep.
What?
He was on the team last year.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Okay. They signed as a small forward Armel Traore. I don't know him as much as a 2-way contract. And then Blake Hinson also as a 2-way contract. In terms of their draft class, they picked up Dalton Connect, as we all know, with the 17th pick. And then little LeBron James, Bronny James, they picked them up with the 55th pick in the draft. Going down to the starters, I've got a point guard, D'Angelo Russell, with his backup being Gabe Vincent. At shooting guard, I got Austin Reeves with his backup being Max Christie. Small forward, LeBron James with his backup being Cam Reddish. Power forward, Rui Hachimura with his backup being Jared Vanderbilt. And then Anthony Davis being obviously the starting center with kind of that backup being Jared Vanderbilt as well, just seeing where Jared Vanderbilt's going to fit in terms of, who they need off the bench and things of that nature.
So you don't think Dalton Connect cracks the rotation?
Not right now. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Yeah. Okay.
I
think he'll play. I just don't think he'll be the backup at those spots.
He'll be like a 9th guy. Essentially.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like a 9th, 10th guy.
Yeah.
And Bronny, which was interesting. I believe they signed him to a contract, not a 2-way contract, but a contract. So it's really going to be, I'm basing my projected starters on kind of, I don't want to say skill, but presumed ability. And right now Bronny's got a ways to go. So what's interesting is I don't believe he's on a 2-way contract. I believe he's on a regular contract. And so I don't know what that's going to mean in terms of bringing him up and down into the G League and doing all of that. I just don't know how that's going to play out. But he's going to fit in there somewhere. I just don't know how.
And, Bronny James he's got some skill set. It's just that his shot is so inconsistent, man. It's really inconsistent. He's got, definitely he's got defensive abilities, but I think one-on-one defensive abilities. I think his team defense awareness that's where he lacks a little bit, and that's where I think he needs to learn it a little bit more. I think, it's going to remains to be seen whether he's an NBA player. I got to tell you though, I'm very impressed on how he's handling all the pressure that he has for being the son of, one of the greatest of all time, right? He's arguably the greatest, but we don't agree with that. But he's arguably the top 3 of all time, right?
Correct.
So it's tough to follow that shadow all the time, especially when he's on the team with you, right? But I gotta say, he's handled it pretty damn well, man. And considering
I agree in terms of his demeanor. He's got great demeanor. I agree because it's not only not easy, but there's a lot of people questioning even spending a draft pick on Bronny James. And then he didn't really do all that much in the summer league. I mean, he made a shot here and there, played better defense than he did offense for sure. But overall he wasn't a standout or anything, and he just kind of
he blends in.
He doesn't put his head down and keeps going. So I hope he does well. I'm
rooting for the kid, man. I'm honestly rooting for the kid, especially for what happened to him, man. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That when he had that heart attack, man, it's crazy, man. I mean, 18-year-old kid or whatever, how old he was, 17 at the time.
Yep.
That's scary, man. And you and I have kids that are at that age. Can you imagine hearing that, man?
No.
Oh, dude.
And not only that, I can't imagine having him go back to the sport or the vocation that potentially caused that.
Correct.
That's a whole other conversation, but I get it. They're athletes, they got to push themselves, but that was a scary moment. And as a scared dad, I would be like, hey, how about you go do something else, son?
Yeah, for sure.
Something where you don't have to work out nonstop.
Right.
Right. In terms of their projected standings, I got the Lakers dropping also. I got them as an 11 seed.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I got them. Yep, with a record of 44-38, just a game better than the Clippers. Now, this isn't LA hate. I'm not hating on LA. Just so everyone's out there, you may think that. I just genuinely think they're gonna. LeBron's a year older. Which means that Anthony Davis is going to have to carry the team. And if anything was made clear about the Olympics, is that Anthony Davis shines when he doesn't have to carry the team, when he can worry about the defensive. And I just don't think he's going to be afforded those opportunities.
What do you think? What do you think the impact JJ Redick will have on this team?
Hard to say. I'd have to see his offense first, but I don't. I think if he's going to have an impact, he's going to need a year or two to kind of get his imprint on the type of player that he's going to need. I just don't see any coach going on a LeBron James team and telling LeBron James what he needs to do or how the team needs to run. I just don't see it. LeBron's been running these teams for a long time, and
but this is one of his buddies, man. I kind of almost handpicked this coach, like he's their buddies. They had a podcast together and stuff. I don't know.
No, but the question is, did he handpick him because JJ would do what he says, or did he handpick him, because he trusts JJ more than he trusts himself? We'll see.
Maybe. JJ Redick's a guy out of Duke. You can tell he's well spoken, pretty sharp guy, right? He's been a color commentator. He's been on, First Take, a lot of these ESPN shows. He's definitely got a presence to him. He definitely knows what he's talking about. We'll see how it translates, right?
Correct. Yeah, I'm hedging my bet that he got put in that spot because he won't argue with LeBron and listen to LeBron more than challenge LeBron. That's kind of how I'm hedging my bet. And if that's true, they're just gonna spiral in a downward pattern. But I'm more than happy. The callers tomorrow or when you see this, you can call me on it in a year from now if I'm wrong, and we'll see. But I just don't. I don't see it. There's too many great teams, coming up. There's too many. I mean, it's just the youth movement is in full effect.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And the older teams, like you say, the old guard, right?
Correct.
The Clippers, the Lakers, the Warriors, they're
the Suns.
The Suns, yeah.
And then you got teams like San Antonio who potentially
that's a good segue because
that's what potentially is on the up and comers. So here we go.
All right.
On that note,
we go to the San Antonio Spurs.
Yes.
All right. So the San Antonio Spurs finished 22-60 last season. They were 14th in the conference. You can see that their offensive rating was 26th in the league. Their defensive rating was 21st in the league, and their net rating was almost near the bottom at 24th. So they're only 6 away from the very bottom. But these guys have a transcendent player in Victor Wembanyama, right? So, but as far as what they did to go ahead and surround this transcendent player to create a better team, they drafted Stephon Castle out of UConn with the number 4 pick. They got it from
which you and I felt was the best player in that NCAA championship.
Oh yeah. I mean that dude is skilled. I mean he screams Kawhi Leonard to me, man. Screams it. This guy is like Kawhi Leonard light right now. So the only thing is, like Kawhi Leonard didn't have much of an offensive game coming out of San Diego State. He was primarily a defensive guy. I mean, he could score, but he wasn't where he is now. I mean, the guy. I mean, he's like. You think, DeMar DeRozan's king of the mid-range. This guy's probably the next king of the mid-range is Kawhi Leonard. But Stephon Castle is from the same mold as Kawhi Leonard. And I don't know how they were able to get this trade from the Wolves. They traded the rights to get they actually had Rob Dillingham, and then they traded him to the Wolves for like 20, 30 swap picks. It was crazy what happened. Yeah. But anyway, they also got Juan Nunez. More than likely, he's going to be a two-way player, maybe a G League player. And then as far as other guys that they've signed, they got a free agent, Chris Paul, out of the Warriors in a 1-year deal. I think he's going to be a difference maker for sure. I mean, can you imagine that pick and roll with him and freaking Victor Wembanyama? I mean,
I keep thinking back when Chris Paul went to Oklahoma,
LA, the Clippers.
He went to the Thunder.
Oh, the Thunder.
Everyone was like, "Dude, that team sucks," and he got him into the playoffs.
Yeah,
and look at where they're at today. I think Chris Paul. I think Pop did a very genius move bringing in Chris Paul.
For sure.
Into this,
and he's another coach on the floor, right? And that's they need. That's the one thing that the Spurs lacked big time. They had a bunch of young guys on the team, and a bunch of young guys on the team usually doesn't work well unless they're like all really good players. Which kind of happened with the Warriors with Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and Curry, right? They all drafted, and then they surrounded those guys with some vets. But it took them surrounding with vets, right? And this is what the Spurs need to do too. They can't just be all young guys. So Chris Paul, this guy, he's the point guard, and this guy is, still looking for his first NBA championship, and I don't think he's going to get it here. I mean, the Spurs are not going to go to the NBA Finals, but he's going to make the team better for sure. So another guy that they also picked up, another former Warrior, Harrison Barnes. They picked him up from the Sacramento Kings via a trade. So you add those two veterans right there. Harrison Barnes does have a championship, right? So and he's a veteran and he's a good player and he's just
he's a solid guy. He's a
solid guy. Exactly.
He's not going to throw fits. He's not going to argue whether he starts or comes off the bench. He's a good guy. He's a good fit for Pop.
Yep, for sure, for sure. So as far as guys that they only lost Devontae Graham. And Devontae Graham went back to the Charlotte Hornets. So those are the transactions to try and help.
And one thing I want to talk about is the center there, the big man. He grew a lot. Wembanyama grew a lot in the Olympics. I think that he definitely was feeling himself in those Olympics, in those Olympic games, and I think that was good for him. And I think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see some of that. That may have accelerated something in him that maybe we would have seen halfway through this coming season or maybe next season. I think we're going to see it early on this season.
Yeah, it's going to be this team is definitely going to win way more games than they did last year. I predict maybe 10 more wins when compared to last year because they only had 21 wins last year. I think they're going to be probably in the 30 to 31 range this year. But as far as their lineup, okay, the projected starting lineup I have is the point guard Chris Paul. Then you have, I think these two guys are kind of interchangeable, but I think you're probably going to have to put Devin Vassell as a shooting guard and then Stephon Castle as a small forward. But I think based on matchups, you can probably interchange both of those guys. And then power forward, you would have Harrison Barnes. I think he's going to go ahead and start. And right there, you have three guys, those three, Devin Vassell, Stephon Castle, Harrison Barnes, all similar sized guys, all really good wing defenders. And then
that's the ticket.
Yep, that's
wing
the ticket.
Defenders, yeah.
And then you have Victor Wembanyama, right? And then as far as the rotation, they have the backup point guard would be Trey Jones. They have a backup small forward in Julian Champagnie. Then the backup power forward in Keldon Johnson. And then the backup center in Zach Collins. So, it's it's not like screaming, whoa, but it's not screaming, oh, man. It's actually going to be a pretty good team. And it's going to be interesting to see because the way I see these guys finishing, I already kind of gave you the sneak peek. I think they're going to be probably moving up maybe 2 slots from the 14th to maybe the 12th, maybe the 11th, right? But if these guys click on all cylinders and they actually start doing way better than everybody thought, I mean, it's very likely that the Spurs brass might want to make some moves to make this team even better if they have the chance, especially with this transcendent player in Victor Wembanyama. I think that Wembanyama is going to lead the league in blocks and dunks this year. Okay, I mean he was already, I think, second or third in the NBA Defensive Player of the Year honors last year. I think he was second or third. Rudy Gobert won it, but this guy was in the conversation. He was a rookie, so another season under the Popovich system, and we all know the Popovich system. These guys play fundamental basketball, man. They're all really fundamental. But both from an offensive and defensive standpoint. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens if this team really does well right from the outset. It's going to be interesting to see if they make any midseason moves, which I think they might if they start doing well.
Yeah, no, good call. I actually, Ed, if you were to ask me, I think they're going to be on the fringe of a play-in game.
Interesting. Okay, so right around 10, right around 10 or 11, right? Right around
10, 11, 9, somewhere in that 9, 10, 11 frame.
Right.
Yep.
All right, man. So that's it for the San Antonio Spurs. Now we go on to my next team, the Houston Rockets. All right. So the Houston Rockets finished 41-41 last year and were 11th in the conference. And this is where you think maybe the Spurs might be, right around 41 wins. Yes. That would be a 20 game difference from last year if they were to get there. You're right. Yes. So we'll see. It's not out of the something that you would say is what? No way. It's not out of the question. It's possible, right? Yep. But you can see that, this team from a offensive and defensive rating standpoint, they're more a defensive oriented team than an offensive oriented team, which kind of surprises me because based on the personnel, I thought they would be more offensive oriented. But it's interesting to see the stats here that the stats tell you they're more of a defensive team, and their net rating was 18th at 1.12. So as far as the transactions, they drafted Reed Shepherd out of Kentucky with the number 3 overall pick. They also got A.J. Griffin from the Atlanta Hawks, but they proceeded to waive him. And then they agreed to a 2-way deal with N'Faly Dante of Oregon. So, I mean, not much as far as transactions go. I think they feel like they have a pretty good young up-and-coming squad. They did lose Boban Marjanovic to the European League, so that's the one loss that they had. Yep. All right, so as far as their projected lineup, so their point guard is Fred VanVleet. Okay, good veteran, could shoot, good, good floor general. On the smaller side, but he's been in the league. He knows how to work. He plays decent defense for a small guy. But then you have shooting guard Jalen Green. This is the guy that was in the same draft class as Jonathan Kuminga. And then you have small forward Dylan Brooks. One of our favorites, right?
The mouth of the South.
Oh man, I'll tell you, man. And then power forward Jabari Smith. That kid's coming around and he's playing well. Yes. And then you have, I would say, probably Nikola Jokic Light and Alperen Sengun out of Turkey.
Yes.
So rotation, all right. So they have one of the Thompson twins, Amen Thompson. You have shooting guard, the newly acquired, drafted shooting guard in Reed Shepherd. You have a small forward in Cam Whitmore. And then you have Steven Adams backing up Alperen Sengun, man. So, I mean, this team looks decent.
So Eddie, you got Shepherd as a shooting guard,
shooting guard. Shooting guard, point guard. It could be either one of the one. But he could play both. But he could probably play both. I would say probably a point guard, shooting guard type.
Yeah, no. The thing I was wondering is if Shepherd picks up, do you think there's any chance they trade Van Fleet?
No, I don't think so, because you need a backup point guard, and those two guys probably they complement each other well. You don't lose much when you take Fred Van Fleet off the floor and you put Reed Shepherd, right? Nor do you, or vice versa, right? And that's probably what you want. You want a team that has the depth where if you were to go ahead and replace your starters, your team's not going to suffer too much. So
but if you have them both on the court, that's a small backcourt.
Well, yeah, both on the court at the same time. That's why I have one or the other being.
But what I'm saying is if they're both, if Shepherd tracks like he was tracking in the summer league, which was pretty good.
Yeah.
If he tracks, they're going to want him on the court, and I'm seeing an issue with having Van Fleet and Shepherd on the court at the same time. That's what I'm thinking.
I know what you're saying. Then what would happen is they'd probably put Reed Shepherd probably as a starter, put Fred Van Fleet coming off the bench. That's the only thing I could think of. Yeah,
I'd like to see how that
goes.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, well, we see what happened with Klay Thompson. It happened to Klay Thompson.
Yeah.
Anyway, so where I see these guys projected, I would say I see them probably winning about 4 or 5 more games. They're going to be They're going to be fighting for the 7th or 8th spot. I think they're going to be playing a team, but they could easily get to the top 6 easily. Last year, the Rockets they had the largest year-over-year improvement of any team last year. They had a 19 win difference from when you compare last year's record to 2022 and 2023. They improved by 19 games. That's huge, incredible. Right? And that's kind of what we're thinking that maybe the Spurs have in them to be able to do that.
Yeah, I'm thinking last year's Rockets is where this year's Spurs are going to line up to.
Yeah. It's not a bad call, man, right?
Yeah.
But in my opinion, I still think that they're one piece away, man. And I think a shooting piece away. I mean, they have good shooters in Fred VanVleet. Now they have Reed Shepherd. Jalen Green's kind of like a streaky kind of shooter. And then the other guys, that's it. Really, Dylan Brooks is not really a shooter. No, Jabari Smith, he tries, but he's not an efficient shooter. And Alperen Sengun, he's not an outside shooter, but he can do it. But he's just like Nikola Jokic. He's just like he has all these down low post moves, can pass. But he has a decent mid-range shot too. But they need, I think, somebody that can shoot from the outside and help this team offensively. That's what I think they're lacking. And because of that, I think they're not going to get any farther than, probably 4 or 5 more wins this year, assuming that everybody stays healthy, of course, which is.
And remind me again how many wins they had last year?
They had 41.
Okay, so you're looking at the 45, 46 range, somewhere in that.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
So that's it, man. That's it for the Rockets. So now we're going to your stuff, man. We're going back to you.
All right, we're going to
the Chicago Bulls.
Your Chicago Bulls. All right. Last year finished in the 9th seed with a record of 39-43. They did lose in the second play-in game to the Miami Heat. They had a pretty good year in terms of transactions. Let's see here. They drafted Matisse Bucelis, who I liked. You liked him? Yep. I liked him quite a bit.
He's cocky, man. I kind of like his swag.
He's a cocky, got a swag individual. Yep. So I liked him. They signed E.J. Liddell as a free agent. Horton Tucker, they signed him as a training camp.
Yep.
Yeah, they signed him as a training camp contract. Yep. Kenny Lofton Jr. also to a training camp contract.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the son of Kenny Lofton?
Yeah, big dude. He's a big dude, man. He's a big dude.
To another training camp, Marcus Damask. And then they waived Andrew Funk. They signed DJ Stewart to a two-way contract. And in terms of kind of key signings, they picked up Jalen Smith. They picked up Chris Duarte, which Chris Duarte is always, I forget which draft class he was in, but he was the guy I wanted over Moses Moody. I believe that was the Kaminga Moody.
Exactly
draft.
it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was the guy that I wanted, but he's found, I think this is his third team now because he got drafted by the Pacers, and so he's moved around a little bit.
The Kings, and now he's going to the Bulls.
Correct. And then they picked up Raekwon Gray, and then they to a two-way contract, another Adam Sanogo, Patrick Williams they re-signed, and then obviously the big kind of move of the year was they traded for Josh Giddey, and they traded away Alex Caruso to get Josh Giddey. And that's going to be an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, man. Because Josh Giddey is, I don't know what happened to him, but man, he was trending up big time because he's a big dude, 6'8". He's a 6'8" point guard. He actually could distribute well. The only problem is he doesn't really shoot very well. Yeah, and he's and defensive wise, he's okay too. He's not as good as Alex Caruso. Alex Caruso is a very good defender.
Correct.
Alex Caruso also is probably a better shooter, but I would say that this guy's a better facilitator, and he's a bigger matchup problem because of how big and tall he is, right? So I it's going to be interesting to see. If you were to me, I think Alex Caruso is the better player only because he's been in the league longer, has more experience. But I would say that Josh Giddey's potential is higher. So, and that's probably
and I don't know if you remember, and I don't want to kind of bring up old stuff, but Josh Giddey had that whole thing with that underage girl.
Yeah,
those pictures and kind of everything seemed to go a little sideways for him after that point. So maybe a year removed from that, kind of it's all I believe it's all cleared up and no legal matters remain. I think that's all been cleared up. So we'll see how he does. But yeah.
You got to wonder, man, because what goes on in the locker room when teammates hear stuff like this. I wonder if they just razz the crap out of them because the same thing kind of happened, not in the same, I would say, kind of in the same realm, but not the same stuff with in the football world, Deshaun Watson, right? I mean, he's had all of these allegations, and he hasn't been the same since, man.
He has not.
Right. So,
and, Eddie, you and I have been in locker rooms and, there's no mercy in those areas.
No, man. No way, man. They let you have it.
The thing that I can't get by, and again, I don't think it would have applied at Oklahoma. I'd have to think long and hard. But, you have such an age gap that, if I have a daughter that's 16 and that dude is doing something to a 16-year-old girl, I'm not going to take that all too kindly.
For sure.
You know what I mean? If I'm in the locker room, with that situation, and I don't know if that was applicable in terms of Oklahoma, but it's such a range there. So you don't know. But I to answer your question, I'm certain they gave him crap. I'm certain.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All kinds of crap.
For sure. Sure.
Yeah.
So
all right, let's see. In terms of starters at point guard, I have Josh Giddey, your starting point guard, with Lonzo Ball if he ever gets back. As the backup. That's another
poor guy, man. I think it's the shoes, man. The shoes screwed up both those kids' careers, man. The Ball brothers. Seriously.
Yes. Yep. That's the common thread, right? And that's just a shame. Lonzo was a more than decent player. He was pretty good.
And, he was.
Yeah. And I don't know if he's ever
good player, man.
Yeah. Let's see. For shooting guard, I got Kobe White. And as his backup, Ayo Dosunmu.
Oh yeah, Ayo Dosunmu. Ayo Dosunmu.
Yep. Zach LaVine as the small forward with Matt Buzelis as his backup. Now keep an eye on that because there was a lot of rumors that they were trying to get rid of Zach LaVine in the offseason.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of teams that would want him. I'm surprised they didn't make a move. Maybe the Bulls are asking for too much.
But I think somewhere in the season that's gonna.
Yeah,
I think Matt's going to become. Yeah, he's going to become the starter. Patrick Williams as your power forward. Yep. Torrey Craig backing him up, and then Vucevic, who's a guy that you've wanted the Warriors to get for a little while now.
He'd be so good on the Warriors.
And he's the starting center with Jalen Smith as his backup.
And I like him. I like Jalen Smith a lot.
That's a pretty decent squad. I've got him though as 10th ranked in the league with a record of 30-52, so still a little, significantly under 500. I think they're going to have to figure some things out. That's where I got them. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this team is definitely in retool mode, not necessarily rebuild mode, although they're very close to rebuild mode. I would say if they'd be in rebuild mode, if Zach LaVine and Vucevic were no longer in the team, right? That'd be a total rebuild. I think they're trying to retool because I think that they see that they have some talent on the team, right? Especially with the newly drafted Matas Bucelis. We'll see, man. I mean, this kid looks pretty decent, man. But they lost at DeMar DeRozan, right? And losing at DeMar DeRozan. I mean, the DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Vucevic, trio. When I first saw that happen, I thought, man, this team was going to be formidable. Then, of course, the Lonzo Ball getting hurt, that just derailed things because I thought he was up and coming. He fixed his, kind of quirky, weird jump shot thing he had, right? He fixed it. He was shooting at a pretty good clip, right? Yeah. So, but I would say that you have him at 30, 32, and 50. 51?
I got him 30 and 52.
30 and 52. 30 and 52. I would say that I would predict them they're going to be a little bit better than that, but not much. I would say maybe 4 to 5 more games more than that.
That's actually a drop from last year too. They were 39.
Yeah,
43. So
I would say it wouldn't be that much of a drop. I think they would come down to. I mean, losing DeMar DeRozan is going to be huge for sure.
Well, the thing about guys like DeMar DeRozan and Chris Paul and a handful of other guys, it's not so much how good they are, but they're steady where the peaks aren't too high and the valleys aren't too low. So they carry you through a slump, and so right now they don't have that guy anymore. Everyone's going to be subject. I think it's going to be a more roller coastery team, and I just think as they're trying to figure it out, they're going to have more lows and highs for this coming season.
Yeah, I mean it's not a bad call. They're definitely going to be lower than they were last year. I just don't think they're going to be a lot lower. I think they're going to be somewhere in between what you say and what happened last year.
It'll be fun to look back at this when the season's over.
I know, huh? You see who's right.
Yeah, we actually just organize and see how close we were.
And one thing I want to also do, probably the very last week, when we finish the team previews, is in that podcast show. I want us to predict the seedings for each of the conferences, right? All right. How they seed. And again, dude, that's me for another freaking lunch or dinner, man. I gotta get my money back, man, with you, man, because you've been taking my money.
Sounds good to me. All right. Moving on to the talk of the hour. The no longer Nova Knicks.
Nova Knicks, man.
And the no more Nova. Well, one of the Nova Knicks is gone. Was it 2? 1, right?
Just one. Dante DiVincenzo.
Just one, DiVincenzo. So as you have here, their ratings, they were 7th on offense, 10th on defense, for an overall net rating of 5th, which is pretty good. That's pretty good. Really good. That's really good. And they should have gone further in the playoffs, but they had a lot of injuries and things that were getting in their way. They were tired. We've talked about the coach there who likes to run the defense ragged. There's some exhaustion there. I'm wondering if some of what they're doing is more depth, more balance. Trying to get some rotations in there where these guys aren't exhausted at the end of the year. So the Knicks last year, they were the 2nd seed at 50 wins and 32 losses. They did lose in the second round to the Indiana Pacers 4-3, so that did go 7, and they ended up losing that series. Okay, so let's talk about the proposed trade because as of earlier today, I don't believe it was official yet. So the trade is this: the Knicks would get Karl Anthony Towns from the Timberwolves, and the draft rights to James Nanaj from the Charlotte Hornets. That's what they would be getting. Okay. The Timberwolves would get Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, Keita Bates-Diop from the Knicks, and as well as a top 13 protected first-round pick that originally belonged to the Detroit Pistons. Now, with that pick, it is top 13 protected next year. In 2026, it's a top 11 protected, and and it's top 9 protected in 2027. And then it will turn into a second rounder if not converted by 2025.
Oh man, there's a lot of moving parts on that.
There's a lot of moving parts there. Wow. So that's what's happening there. And then one of the things that was involved here was they needed a third team because they needed to clear some salary cap, I believe, to pick up Karl Anthony Towns. So they included the Hornets, and the Hornets would get second-round picks in 2025, 2026, and 2023. Plus, they pick up DeQuan Jeffries, Charlie Brown Jr., Darius Washington, all from the Knicks via sign and trade. And they will also get $7.2 million in cash, probably some sort of offset in terms of a salary cap. So that is the proposed trade. So before I go any further, let's talk about this. So the key pieces here are the Knicks get Karl Anthony Towns, and the Timberwolves get Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo. Now, I think public opinion is going to be that the Knicks did good here. When I look at this,
I would say the Minnesota Timberwolves got better off.
That's how I feel. I feel because you have Julius Randle as the 4, who's a more natural four than Towns was. Right. Then you got Rudy Gobert at the center. Then you got a dog in DiVincenzo, who, in my opinion, was a big reason for the success the Knicks had last year.
For sure.
A big, sure. Now, this isn't as exaggerated, but it smells to me, Eddie, like the Drew Holiday trade. Like DiVincenzo isn't Drew Holiday. I'm not saying that.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
But
that
it has that whiff.
Yeah.
It has you're giving up the heart of the team, bro. Or a heart of the team. Obviously Brunson is the heart of the team, but correct. But DiVincenzo is a key piece, and kind of like you would look at Antetokounmpo as being the heart of the team, but Drew Holiday being just as equal. I'm kind of looking at this way, and I think this is a really good trade for the Timberwolves. And I'm looking at the Knicks, and I'm wondering, plus Karl Anthony Towns is more of a sensitive individual, shall we say?
Yeah,
and he's going to
Latino,
probably,
man. That's Latinos. We're sensitive, man.
We're sensitive, and he's going to probably one of the top 2 toughest markets in the league. The minute something happens, he's going to hear about it. So we'll see how this plays out. What are your thoughts about the kind of the proposed trade here?
I think it's a win-win for both teams. I can see why they made this trade. Okay. The Knicks. They have a very good defensive-minded team. They have, Jalen Brunson, who has emerged as a rising superstar, realistically, a second-round pick being a rising superstar. You had, the Julius Randle, he was always getting hurt. I don't think he really flowed with that offense. They really didn't have, they have a center in Mitchell Robinson, but dude, they're always getting hurt. They have this great freaking, motor of an overall player and one of the Nova Knicks in Josh Hart, a guy that I really, really like a lot. He's just a gritty type of player. And I think Karl Anthony Towns fills a hole that they need a big guy that's multifaceted. And this is what he is. He's 7 foot multifaceted. He can score at all levels. He plays decent D. Him and Jalen Brunson teamed up together. I think that's going to be like magic for these guys.
So let me ask you this, Eddie.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time and figure out how to keep Hartenstein, would you rather have him over Towns?
Different player only because, Hartenstein has pretty good passing skills. He's good. He's a very good defensive player. But nowhere near the offensive prowess that Karl Anthony Towns is.
Correct.
Karl Anthony Towns can play defense, maybe not as versatile as a Hartenstein out in the perimeter, because Hartenstein could play guys out in the perimeter, whereas Karl Anthony Towns isn't as adept at it just because he's a little heavier guy, right? But he can do it. He's just not as good. He's more of a low post kind of block shot kind of threat, which is what Rudy Gobert was for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And he could do that though, and that's what I think the Knicks are thinking is like, okay, we have this 2-way player in someone who's probably leaning more on the offensive end, with the shooting prowess, because this guy can't shoot, man. He can't shoot. All right, he's a good 3-point shooter. You don't want big guys to be out there all the time, but he can do it when it's necessary, and he's a very skilled offensive player. But he can play defense, and I think that's part of the reason why is they need him. Whereas Hartenstein, he couldn't really play offense. He could pass, but he could play defense. But I think that they think that a better two-man game would develop, a pick and roll game between Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns, because then where do you guard? They could both shoot, right? So that's part of the reason.
Given the coaching philosophy, I think Hartenstein was a better fit for that philosophy than Towns would be. I think Towns, they'll be, if things follow how they have, there's going to be a lot demanded from him on the defensive end.
For sure. But they had Mitchell Robinson too.
That's where I worry about the sensitivity piece.
Yeah, and it could be that they put Mitchell Robinson to be that guy as the center, and then put this guy at what he's been playing, for the Minnesota Timberwolves as a power forward. Maybe that's what they think about doing, or they put him as a starter. They have a lot of options. Is all I'm saying that they could.
Yeah, no, they do. Yeah, I'm going to monitor this because I'm a little more, I think Minnesota got better, and I think the Timberwolves potentially got a little worse. I mean, sorry.
Well, the Knicks.
Minnesota got better, and the Knicks got a little worse. They got a more talented player,
definitely. Dante DiVincenzo is the piece that I think puts that trade on the advantage for the Timberwolves, because of that piece. If it was straight up Randall and Towns, I would have said that the Knicks got the better deal, right?
The Knicks,
I think in order to make the contracts work and all that, and to make, Dante DiVincenzo definitely proved to be a valuable asset, last year in the playoffs. I mean, that guy was playing awesome, right? So, he definitely got himself, an opportunity to be going for a championship again, right? Because he has one for the Milwaukee Bucks until he messed up his knees, and yet he's kind of been recovering since then. But he's back to the way he was, man. And I remember telling you about this guy when he was being drafted. I'm like, dude, he'd be awesome for the freaking Warriors, man. We always bring it back to the Warriors, but anyway. But he was a Warrior, and we couldn't keep him. And I'm happy he's flourishing elsewhere. I think he's going to definitely make the Minnesota Timberwolves a beast of a team, for the West. So
I mean, their defense got better
for sure.
Yeah, their offense. If Randall stays healthy, he's a pretty solid offensive weapon. So offense to be determined, but their defense got better.
Yep, I agree.
All right, moving here. So that was one of the transactions. Let's see. They picked up Jacob Toppin as a two-way contract. Kevin McCullough also as a two-way contract. He signed him as a draft pick.
Yep.
Chuma Okeke signed as a free agent.
Oh, yeah.
Precious Chiawa re-signed.
Achua. Precious Achua.
Yes.
Yep.
Cameron Payne, they picked him up as a free agent. Ariel Hakaporti signed him as a two-way contract.
I think he was the last pick of the draft, if I remember correctly.
Yes, I believe he was. Keita Bates-Diop, they traded for him, and then the big splash that the Knicks had this season was Mikal Bridges. They traded for him. And then they picked up Pacomi Didier, which was their draft pick. I believe the only draft pick of their original ones that they had that they kept. That was kind of a spider web spaghetti monster there to figure out what they ended up doing with all their draft picks. But they signed him, and then they ended up picking up Kevin McCullough, which I mentioned about him. So.
Yep.
Let's see. In terms of starters, projected starters and backups, I got Jalen Brunson as the starter with Miles McBride as the backup, Mikal Bridges as the shooting guard, also with McBride as the backup, OG Anunoby as the starting small forward with Josh Hart as the backup, Julius Randle as the starting power. Oh, actually.
It would be Karl-Anthony Towns.
We got to figure out what that's most likely going to go to Precious now, but
the backup to Karl-Anthony Towns.
We'll need to figure that out, and then if they pick up Towns, he would be the starting center with Mitchell Robinson as his backup.
Right.
Yep. And I do have the Knicks being a little better this year, and again, this projected standing was somewhere in the middle of how this trade is playing out. But I do have them as 53-29, which I believe is 3 games better than they were last year. As the second seed again, repeating as the second.
Yeah,
seed.
they're going to be a problem, man. They're a problem. The Knicks are good again, man. And the NBA likes
they are good. They are good. I agree. They're good.
Yeah.
They have a good, Brunson, Bridges, Anunoby, whoever their power forward is going to be, and Karl-Anthony Towns is a pretty good. That's a pretty good squad.
And then Josh Hart.
Josh Hart is a backup. Yep. A fantastic player. Correct.
Yep.
All right.
So, yeah.
Cool. All right. Let's see. I think that was it for me. Rolling on to you.
I got my last two. We got the last two here, man. We're at an hour. So your prediction was right, about an hour and 15 minutes or so.
We'll see.
That's pretty good, man. All right. So the Atlanta Hawks. All right. So this team finished 36-46. They were the 10th team in the conference last year. They were in the play-in, but then they lost to the Bulls in the play-in. So can you imagine? I mean, in the East Conference, winning 36 games, and you're potentially a playoff team. You won't even sniff that in the West. But anyway, you can see that their offensive rating, they're 12th. So they're a very good offensive team. But that's when they had DeJounte Murray along with Trae Young. But of course, that changed this offseason.
Yep.
And their defensive ratings where they suffer. I mean, they're second to last in the entire league from the defensive standpoint. This team is kind of run TMC or run TMP like, right? So their net rating is negative 2.09, which is near the bottom of the NBA. So as far as transactions, they only really had one draft pick, and they had the number one draft pick. So they actually had they picked Zachary Reese-Archet with the number one pick. Looks like a pretty good player, like has a big motor. He plays good on both ends. It seems to be kind of like a guy who runs the floor well. We'll see. For
the most part, I thought he was uninspiring in the summer league. I didn't really see a whole lot out of him, but he's still getting acclimated. He's in a new country, a lot of new things for him. So I'll give him a pass on that. But
you can see the tools are there, man. He just needs to get his legs under him a little bit. So, but then as I mentioned, they traded away DeJounte Murray to the Pelicans, and they received in exchange Larry Nance, Dyson Daniels, and then two first-round picks from the Lakers in 2025 and 2027. So they also received David Roddy from the Suns, and then they also got Cody Zeller from the Pelicans, and then the guys that they lost, in addition to DeJounte Murray, are Sadiq Bey. They lost him to the Wizards. They lost EJ Adele, and then they lost AJ Griffin, and that's pretty much it as far as their transactions. So as far as their lineup goes, so in my opinion, I think they should have kept DeJounte Murray instead of Trae Young, right?
I agree with you.
But I thought he was a better overall player for this team. Trae Young is a better offensive player. There is no doubt. That guy's a problem offensively because he's so freaking fast. He can pass very well, and he's probably the first disciple of the NBA, the first disciple of Stephen Curry, right? Really.
Search of Stephen, yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of Stephen Curry light, really, as far as shooting prowess goes. But, as far as being able to drive to the bucket and finish just like Steph, he doesn't have it. But he can pass. He passes well, probably a little bit better than Steph Curry. But I just think DeJounte Murray should have been the guy that they kept instead of Trae Young. But anyway,
I'm with you.
They have Trae Young. So the starting lineup is Trae Young as their point guard. Then they have their shooting guard, Bogdan Bogdanovic. Then they have the newly acquired Zachary Reese-Archet as their small forward. They have their power forward, Jalen Johnson, a good player, actually. He's a good emerging player. And then they have Clint Capella as their center. Now, it's going to be interesting to see if Clint Capella stays as a center, starting center, because you have this up-and-coming guy, Onyeka Okongwu, out of USC, who had a really good year last year. And he's more versatile. He can shoot outside. So, it's going to be interesting to see if that changes. But as far as rotational pieces, in addition to Onyeka Okongwu, you have DeAndre Hunter at small forward. You have power forward, newly acquired Larry Nance, and they have newly acquired power point guard Dyson Daniels. So they look to be a deeper team, a deeper, better team than last year, right? So what's interesting is, looking at projected finish, an interesting step here as I was doing some research on this. So the only time in back-to-back years that the number one overall pick in the NBA draft won Rookie of the Year, it's only happened once. And it happened in 2015 with Andrew Wiggins of Minnesota Timberwolves, and then the following year with Karl Anthony Towns in 2016. That's the only time the number one pick has won Rookie of the Year in back-to-back seasons.
Wow.
Last year, the number one pick was Victor Wembanyama, right? This year's number one pick is Zachary Reese-Archet. Now, it's going to be interesting to see if he is going to be Rookie of the Year. I mean, he has all the tools to be able to do that, and he's probably going to get a lot of run, right? That's what these high draft-picked players usually land on a team that's not very good, so they're going to get a lot of run, right? But the other guy who probably could push him for Rookie of the Year would probably be a Reed Shepherd. But Reed Shepherd's going to be more of a rotational piece on that team because. So that's the thing, is that Zachary Richarchet is going to have his opportunity to shine. So it's going to be interesting to see if it happens again, because it could happen again. And what's interesting, it's back-to-back French players, right? You have Victor Wembanyama out of France, and then you have Zachary Richarchet out of France. So
you heard it here first. My dark horse for that is Matas Bucelis.
Okay.
For Rookie of the Year.
Not Cam Christie, bro?
Not Cam Christie. He's
right,
still.
I'm just giving you crap, man.
Yeah, I know you are. But that's my dark horse. I'm calling it now.
All right. Okay. All right. I think Zachary Richarchet is definitely has the opportunity to be the number one, the Rookie of the Year. I mean, he's going to get a lot of play, so that's why I think he's probably going to get it. But that'll be interesting. That's a good dark horse that you picked. You never know. Maybe some like Jalen Tyson, out of Cleveland. That dude looks good, man. I don't know.
That guy does look good, but he's like, how would I explain? He's like just more like a solid guy that's going to be solid from day one. Not spectacular, not just a solid guy from day one. That's kind of how I see him.
Yeah. But someone like that can emerge, right? Because he could be, really good. But he's going to be on a team that has a lot of. He's going to be a rotational piece, and the guys going to win Rookie of the Year are the guys that play a lot. They step into a role and they're started right away, right? I don't see Alex Sarr.
I'm kind of Zach LaVine, not being the starter for very long is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, but I don't see Alex Sarr being the guy. Although it could change. I mean, he didn't have a very good summer league, right? He just kind of drifted. He didn't really assert himself. But he has all the tools to be the guy. Most of the GMs pick that guy to be the guy. The guy that is probably has the superstar that screams superstar in that draft. But the motor is not there. I don't see it. But a lot of things can change, man. But anyway, so as far as the Hawks, I see them going to be pretty much more of the same as they did last year. They might win 1 or 2 more games for the rest of the year, but I think they'll be scratching the surface to play in the play-in game like they did last year. So I don't see them really moving up. I think this is just they have pretty good pieces, but the East is getting better too, man. So that's what I'm saying. I said they're going to probably win maybe 37 to 38 games, pretty much like they did last year. So that's what I see.
I've told my Atlanta fans, how much does it ache you to have traded for Luka or traded Luka away for?
Dude, man, that hurts, man. Can you imagine that? Oh man, can you imagine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right on, man. So that's it for the Hawks, man. Any comments, or just move on?
No. That was good. I like the Richarchet commentary. We'll see how he does, but
all right.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they definitely should have kept DeJounte Murray, and
instead of Trae Young. Yeah.
Yep. And I think Trae Young. The thing I think about Trae Young is, you remember when Jordan was big and people were hiring, let's draft baby Jordan, Harold Miner, and let's draft this guy, and because they're kind of like Jordan-esque, but they never were Jordan. I mean, the closest was Kobe. The closest ever was Kobe. Yes. That's kind of how I see him. You do some stuff that Steph does, but you're not Steph, bro.
Yeah. But he is the closest to Steph in the NBA from a shooting prowess standpoint.
Yes.
But overall, no. Steph Curry. I was playing golf with a guy who plays basketball a lot, and he played in college, and he was just telling me, man, Steph Curry is like in a whole nother level offensively. I mean, he has every shot that you can think of. He has everything. He can finish well from both hands. He can shoot all levels. He has got an underappreciated drive and kick game. I mean, the guy is a great finisher. More people they don't give him a lot of credit, and I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right, man. So when you look at that from that standpoint, Trae Young does a lot of what I just described. It's just that Steph Curry does it on a whole nother level, man. Right?
But that's the ticket, though, Eddie. Right? It's that whole other level that's required to carry a team.
Yeah.
And they drafted Trae Young to be that guy.
Yeah, and he's not that.
He's not
too young. He's too small. You know,
Yeah,
Steph Curry
and
worked on his body. He got big, right? He got bigger and stronger.
and I don't want to say he's immature, but his outlook is different than Steph's. You know, it's just his overall. So we'll see. I mean, you know, he's still very young, and
Yeah.
you know,
But he's not on the same trajectory as Luka Doncic. So I mean, sorry, Atlanta Hawks fans.
Yeah,
Luka bringing that up and slapping in the face.
Luka's like, we're going to the playoffs. Get on my back. We're going.
Exactly.
You know, that's the kind of guy he is. You know, and so
exactly.
you know, potential face of the NBA here.
Yep.
If not already. Yeah. All right, moving on to the.
All right, man. So this is our last team that we're covering, and that's the Charlotte Hornets. Now, again, as I mentioned last week, we're going to go ahead and cover teams just randomly. There is no structure, you know, not alphabetical order, not conference, how they finished. We just pick teams randomly, man. But I have a list.
Hey, Eddie, I think you left out a negative on your net rating. Otherwise, they'd be giving the Celtics a run for their money.
Oh, you're right. You know, right. It is supposed to be negative. Thank you, man. I did forget that. You know, I can't edit it now. But anyway, that should be a negative 10. You're right. Thank you, man. So they're a negative 10. Woo! Yep. So anyway, so they're dead last as far as rating goes, for net rating. So the Charlotte Hornets, they are 21 and they were 21 and 61 last year, 13th in the conference. Can you believe it? 21-61, they were 13th in the conference. You would think that they would be worse, but anyway, they weren't. So you can see their offensive rating, they were 27th, defensive rating, they were 29th, and then dead last as far as net rating. And I remember last week when we were covering, I think it was the Pistons, or no, it was the I forgot what team it was, the Wizards, or I forgot who we were
I think it was the Pistons. It was the Pistons.
They were 29th, right?
Yeah, and I was like, who's worse than the Pistons?
The 30th, right?
Yeah.
And it's these guys. These guys were the 30th last year, right? So anyway, so as far as transactions, they drafted Tijan Salawan. I think that's hopefully how you say his name. At number 6. They drafted point guard KJ Simpson at number 42. They acquired shooting guard Josh Green in the Klay Thompson trade. They also acquired Taj Gibson. As far as losses from their team, they waived.
Taj Gibson's still around, brother?
He's still around, man. Yeah. Yeah, he's still around. So they waived shooting guard Seth Curry, younger brother of Steph Curry. They waived Davis Bertans. They also waived Bryce McGowan's, and they also waived Alexej Pokusevsky. Anyway, so as far as projected starting lineup, all right, we all know LaMelo Ball is this team goes as LaMelo Ball goes, right? And LaMelo
Ball goes to the doctor a lot.
He goes to the doctor a lot, man. I think it's those shoes, man. Those big baller brand shoes, man. Man, seriously. You know, and they have to wear it because Dad's telling them to wear it, and this is part of the revenue stream. But
that ain't talking like he used to be. I'll tell you that.
I agree, man. Remember, he used to get all that freaking airtime, man, and he was just annoying, man. He was annoying, but you know, he definitely could. He could talk it up, man. He could talk it up with the. You know, that's why they put him on, because he just loved to talk. So, but anyway, as far as projected starting lineup, they have a point guard LaMelo Ball. They have a shooting guard, and I would say probably third in the rookie of the year last year in Brandon Miller. It was first it was Wembanyama, and then second was Chet Holmgren, then third Brandon Miller. So he's the shooting guard, and then the small forward they have Grant Williams, and then they have power forward Tijani Salawan, and then they have center Mark Williams as their starting lineup. And then as far as their rotation, so the backup point guard, you have KJ Simpson, you have shooting guard Cody Martin, and then small forward newly acquired Josh Green, and then also Nick Richards as the backup center to Mark Williams. And you know, to me, those two centers are very interchangeable. They both play very similarly. So they're both young. So you know, I thought that, you know, we were talking in the pre-draft show that I thought that one of these guys might be traded, and they decided to keep both. And I think it's probably because they don't lose much. Once one of those guys comes off the floor, the other guy comes in. It's kind of like the same player, right? So I think that's probably why they did that. So
probably need a little more clarity on who might potentially be better as well down the line.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. So so this team is, you know, as far as projected finish, you know, I see them winning maybe 6 to 7 games, you know, from 21 that they did last year. Right.
Eddie, I was listening to your updates in terms of transactions.
Yeah, they didn't do too much.
So unless these young guys get better, Eddie, I don't even see that. But I'm with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's 20, but this is all contingent on LaMelo Ball. If LaMelo Ball is playing, this team is better, right?
That's true.
But he's not playing. So if he plays, I mean, Brandon Miller is a good player, man. So they found that guy, okay? And then this Tajani Salwan, we'll see how he plays, man. He could be a good player too. We don't know. It's all a bunch of young guys, right? But in my opinion, as I mentioned, from the Detroit Pistons, that we talked about them last week, that these guys are going to probably be in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, man. Honestly, man. It probably no teams are going to tank really anymore. They have this in play tournament now that kind of stops that from happening, assuming the teams really care because they get money out of winning, right? So, but this team, they're nowhere near, right? I see their offensive, defensive ratings and their net ratings staying roughly about the same as they did last year, with some improvement just because they got guys that have been on the team for another year that are getting the offense, but it's all contingent and dependent on LaMelo Ball. If LaMelo Ball plays, this team is going to be winning 6 to 7 games more, but I think it's in their best interest to tank. I don't want to say that teams should tank, but you got a draft class coming up that has a bunch of good players with that Cooper Flag being at the top. So anyway.
Yeah, I just listen to them and they're like got so much improvement to do that it's just so hard to pick where.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's it, man. That's it for our show. We covered 8 teams. We actually before we covered the 8 teams, we talked about the passing of Dikembe Mutombo. We talked about his legacy as a player as well as a humanitarian, and how good of a person that guy was. His great voice, his no, right? Yeah. So Dikembe Mutombo. Yeah, his commercials are awesome, man. But we covered this week. We covered the Clippers, Lakers, Spurs, Rockets from the West, and then we covered the Bulls, Knicks, Hawks, and Hornets. We're gonna come back next week. Again, we intended to do this live this week, but because of what happened with the debates for the vice president happened on Tuesday. The football show was supposed to air on Tuesday, but they decided to go ahead and put that first because they're knee deep in the football season. It takes precedent, and then they gave us the option of doing this today as recorded or live tomorrow. We decided to do it recorded today, and we're going to come back live next week. And then by next week, I think we're going to have Angel Johnson again to talk about WNBA, and then we're going to continue covering another 8 teams for our preseason coverage. So again, this week is the beginning of the preseason. So definitely watch the games. Twan and I are going to be watching the games. We'll be commenting on some of that next week. But anyway, so again, this is Buzzer Beaters. I'm Eddie Aparicio. This is my host, Anthony Twan Corral. You can find us on Grumblings Media. You can find us on Rumble, YouTube, X, Facebook, pretty much anywhere you can find your podcasts, any outlet that you can find your podcast. So again, this is Buzzer Beaters, and I am Eddie Aparicio. This is Anthony Twan Corral, and we are signing off.
Hey everybody, this is Big John from Grumblings Media, and I just want to say thank you for watching our content. If you want to support our efforts here at Grumblings Media, just smash the subscribe button right here, totally free, or just go ahead and consume more of our great content. Click either one of these 2 boxes.